Hi everyone, welcome to this week's first live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm broadcasting to you live from Budapest, Hungary. I hope all of you are doing great and I hope you had some time to practice your IELTS and your English over the past couple of days. We've been working hard to produce some new high definition videos for you and for our websites. Hi everyone who's joining right now. Hi Sumaya Akhtar. Hi Bayan. Hi Rams. Hi Naveen. Good to see a member joining in on time. Hi Manisha. I'm doing okay, thank you. I'm weathering a little bit of a cold, but still doing all right. Okay, as usual, our materials do come from our websites for academic IELTS, aehelp.com. And if you're studying general IELTS, please visit us at gieltshelp.com, where you will find our 6 full practice exams, over 100 hours of lesson videos, and a fully interactive course for your phone, tablet, computer, as well as help for writing and speaking. Here's a quick peek at what those look like. This is our general IELTS web portal. You can log in at the top here, and then you get access to all of our materials. And with the blue background, this is our academic IELTS portal. Again, if you log in, clicking this blue button here, you get access to this beautiful page with all these tabs that you can open up. For example, here's the lesson videos, and then you can see lots and lots of organized lesson videos there. Quite bright, but you get the idea. All right, let's get back to our lesson. So today we are looking at a task 1. We're looking at pie charts. We will work through an example together. Sainul, I see your comment that tomorrow is your speaking test. We have lots of great videos for speaking on our channel as well as on our website. We've just released 4 new full speaking videos on our website with a native Thai and a native Vietnamese speaker, so check that out. Russell, the video quality on my end looks quite good, so I think the connection is on your end, so check it out. However, if other people experience the same, do let me know. Okay, so again, you can buy our exam books that we use in these classes at AEHelp's, you buy it at Amazon. Look for AEHelp's Academic IELTS, or if you're studying General IELTS, look for GEHelp's General IELTS, and again, you can buy that through your Amazon bookstore in hard copy. We have 2 books for each, 3 exams in each one. And if you have questions about IELTS or our products, Adrian at aehelp.com. That's my email. You can send me some questions there. Thank you, students who said that the video is okay. Yeah, I figured it was just on that student's end. The live stream's telling me that it's quite healthy. Hi, Risolva. How are you? Okay, so again, live streaming, Central European Time, CET. If you put that into Google, you'll see the time zone difference. Here's just a quick peek for the 17th to the 20th. Today we're doing a task 1 pie chart, academic IELTS. Tomorrow some reading strategy. 19th we'll do a speaking part 2. And then on the 20th we do a members chat, and I've had a request for doing a diagram type task 1 for that. So that's what we'll be doing for the members chat class. Okay, let's cut right into the lesson. So here's our writing task 1. Again, this comes from our website. So you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. It's really important that you only spend 20 minutes on task 1. Why? Can some students that watch these lessons tell me why should you only spend 20 minutes on task 1? And then of course, you need to write 150 words minimum. So the question will include that as well. It will say minimum 150 words. That means that if you write more than 150 words, that's okay. You don't lose marks. In fact, for high marks like band 7 or 8, 9, you should have some more words than 150. But if you write less than 150 words, it's considered task incomplete, and you will start losing marks. And in IELTS, they do count your words, okay? Ayman Hamdi says, well, don't spend more than 20 minutes on this because it's only 1/3 of your writing mark. That's what Naveen says as well. Absolutely. Yeah, task 1 is 1/3 of your mark, and task 2 is 2/3 of your mark, roughly. So you definitely want to make sure that you leave that 40 minutes. Also, I noticed through the years that when students practice task 1 and they know how to write an essay for diagram or chart, they usually have better writing. It's a little bit easier writing. When you actually know what you're doing for task 1, it's a little bit easier than task 2. Why? Does anybody know why task 1 is actually a little bit easier than task 2 after you practice and you prepare for IELTS? Okay. Why? Tell me that. And of course, for this reason, you should always do task 1 first and leave task 2 for second. You should never start with task 2. You should always start with task 1. Okay. So Roshni Kunte says, well, task 1 is easier because they give the information step by step. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Roshni. Task 1, as I've said before, is an expository type essay. It means you explain information, and all of the information is there. You just have to learn how to identify, interpret, and then put that information into words on paper. So it doesn't take a lot of thinking. Takes some, but not a lot of thinking. It's more just knowing expository essay, practicing, and having the writing skills. It's in front of you, okay? Task 2, you actually have to plan, think, have good ideas, put them together. So task 2 is more challenging to write well. It's a longer essay. It requires a better cohesion, better structure as well to get a high mark. So always start with task 1, never spend more than 20 minutes, write at least 150 words. Okay, so the charts below show the percentages of types of vehicles sold in the United States in the selected year. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. All right, so step number 1 is you should always read the question first. So you read the question, then what do you do? Okay, what do? You've read the question, good. You get a pretty good idea of what's happening. What do you do next? Shailesh, yeah, I see that you got a task 2 question, which you've seen in a lecture. That's great. Yeah, we go through a lot of topics. So, okay, boom, look at that. At least 10 students there, or 9 students or so, are saying, paraphrase the question. So look at the question, paraphrase it. Yes, and what? So I want to paraphrase the question and do what else? So I'm very happy that so many of you realize that paraphrasing is my next step, but you need to do a little bit more than just paraphrase. What else should you be thinking as well as paraphrasing? And I'm hoping a couple of you that have been watching carefully in the last few weeks will be able to answer this question. So while you're paraphrasing, there's Jeffrey. Hi, Jeffrey. How you doing? Yeah, definitely make sure that you use correct language for the type of question. So you realize that these are pie charts. It's not a line graph. It's not a bar graph. Okay, so definitely you're paying attention that you're using the correct language. And you also need to add detail, okay? I'm going to emphasize that every single time. So, Jeffrey, you're right. We need to... first of all, make sure you realize this is a pie chart. So you use correct language. We'll talk about that. Okay, and then secondly, your big first step 1 is paraphrase the question and add detail, okay? Remember, I keep saying that. Add some more detail. So don't just do a simple paraphrase of the question, but add some more detail. So here, It says the charts below show the percentages of types of vehicles sold in the United States in the selected years, okay? So let's take a look at these pie charts. We can see that here it's 1980, here it's 1990, and we have 4 of them. We have 2000, 2010, and then we have cars, trucks, SUVs, okay? So those are the cars. So how should I paraphrase, okay? What is my overview here? So the overview is basically the paraphrase and details. So try to paraphrase and give the details while I write up this information. Saini says, the given pie chart depicts the proportion of types of transport vehicle which was sold between the time period from 1980 to 2004 in the United States. Saini, you're kind of on the right track, but be careful because you're writing about a line graph, not about pie charts. Pie charts don't show continuity. We only have data for those 4 years. We don't actually have data for the entire 30 years, okay? So careful with that. So you want to paraphrase plus detail and give the most obvious info. Okay, that's your overview. That's what your overview contains. That's your first paragraph. It's about 2 to 3 sentences. Naveen says the pie charts depict the proportion of different kinds of automobiles vendored in the United States in the years 1980, 90, 2000, and 2010. That's much better, Naveen. That's much more accurate for pie charts. Absolutely. How many pie charts, Naveen? 4. Don't be shy. Put that in there. The 4 pie charts depict the proportion of different kinds of automobiles. What kind of automobiles? SUVs, trucks, and cars. Don't be shy to put that in there either to make it that full band 8-9 sentence. Jubilant James, the 4 given pie charts depict different types of vehicles, including SUVs, trucks, and cars, bought in the United States for the time periods 1980, 90, 2000, and 2010. That would be your band 9, Jubilant James. Careful with your word choice there. We're not talking about transportation. We're talking about purchases, okay? So you have to be accurate there. All right, but otherwise you're getting along on the right track. Just make sure that your details are accurate and you're giving the right information. Okay, so here we go. So these 4 pie charts depict the types of vehicles, trucks, cars, and SUVs sold in the United States, or sold in America in the years 1980, 90, 2000, and 2010. Okay? So those are the details, all right? So it's a paraphrase and giving more detail to the information. Now, that's what I do first. Second, okay, so just like I mentioned here for the overview, you basically take a look at your charts, graphs, your data. If it's a diagram, you look at that. And then you identify the most obvious piece of information. What is the most obvious piece of information in these 4 pie charts, okay? So here, I mean, you're not going to have color in the actual IELTS, so don't worry about color, but here it's easier for the lessons purpose. You'll have shades, okay? So you do need to be careful about that. But what's the most obvious piece of data, okay? Let's see. And I can see some of you are writing up some more of these overviews, so I'll read that while you're giving me the second sentence, which is the most obvious piece of information. The pie charts illustrate the total sales of vehicles, namely truck, car, SUV, in the years 1980, 90, 2000, and 2010. Okay, good. Annalisa, good. Add in the 4 pie charts, okay? Just tell the reader how many pie charts you're looking at right away. Roshni, good. Good rephrase there. The 4 pie charts illustrate the different types of vehicles, not motorcycles, because motorcycles mean like Harley Davidson. Rum, rum, rum. You're going to lose points. It's an incorrect use of language there, so careful. We're not talking about motorcycles, not in this case, although they are fun. So a lot of you have just thrown up a single word there, cars. So if I'm writing my IELTS, essay and I just write a single word like cars, like this for my second sentence, and put a period, I will probably get a pretty bad mark for that kind of a sentence. So that's not going to work. You need a little bit more information than that, a full sentence, okay? Always looking for those full sentences. Yes, I'm poking fun right now because I know you understand what I'm talking about and I know you have the right idea, but I want to see that as a full sentence, not as that, okay? Always put 110% in. And then you'll get 120% out. Okay, so Hamza says the cars are 1 and the trucks is the only which has 10%. Hamza, that's way too much detail for the overview. You just want to keep it simple. Simra says car sales decrease continuously. Again, a little bit too much detail. You don't need to say that much, okay? So here, we can just keep it more simple. In 1980, cars are very dominant. 1990, there's a lot of car sales as well. Here, there's a lot of car sales as well. And here as well. How many? Over 50% in all cases, right? 95, 79, 54, 58. Okay? So kind of a good sentence. You could do this different ways, but a good sentence would be something like, at first glance, it is very obvious that cars are the most popular type of vehicle sold in all 4 years, making up at least half of all vehicle types, or half of all vehicles purchased. Okay? So that would be your Band 9 sentence, all right? So at first glance, a little bit of a leading in expression. It is very obvious that cars are the most popular type of vehicle sold. Most popular type of vehicle. This is human language. I'm interpreting the data. I'm translating the data into human language. Sold in all 4 years, making up at least half of the vehicles purchased. They don't say 50%, but I say half, okay? So Naveen says the percentage of cars sold were higher than the remaining 2 vehicles. Kind of, Naveen, but you could make it a little bit better, okay? Mahmoud Hassan says overall cars had by far the highest share over the period of 30 years. Hamoud Hassan, even though that's quite possibly true, we do not have that data because this is not a line graph, or these aren't line graphs. So we can't see every year in the 30 years. We can only see the 4 years. So we don't want to assume or incorrectly report that that's the case, all right? Especially if you think about this here, Hassan. So if you're looking at 2000, 2010, cars are about half. We don't know if there might have been a very strange year here where maybe in 2002 SUVs were the hype and everybody wanted one, and in 2002 for some reason SUVs were 52%. You never know, right? So don't report as if you're writing about a line graph. Okay, so I've created my overview. The overview's looking good. Let's read it together. These 4 pie charts depict the type of vehicles, trucks, cars. So you always want to check and review if you have a couple of minutes for little mistakes like that. Trucks, cars, and SUVs sold in America in the years 1980, 90, 2000, and 2010. At first glance, it is very obvious that cars are the most popular type of vehicle sold in all 4 years, making up at least half of all vehicles purchased. Okay, what should I do next? So what should I do next? Kesra says the predominant type of vehicle sold in all 4 of these years are cars. Not these charts, Kesra. It's weird to refer to it as charts. So what do I do next? I have my overview now. It's looking good. What is my next step? What do I do after I've written my overview? What should I do? What should I do? Simran, we have private speaking, IELTS practice interview classes online. You can get those through our website. So if you go to the website, you can find speaking practice interview. So Juan Pablo says, well, look at the main differences. Okay. Ramesh, the overview is the introduction to answer your question. Okay. So Faruza says, write the body. Yeah, the body is the analysis, absolutely. But before we write the body, what should we do? Okay. Sempath, there is no word limit in task 1 or task 2. It's only a word minimum. You have to write 150 words minimum. Okay. Naveen, good. So our members, of course, that watch these classes regularly, you should know these. So you say, mark the points for comparison. So have a look and mark these points of comparison. Yeah, so we are going to write the body, or what's called the analyses here. But before we can do that, to be effective, we need to mark our points of comparison. So we need to say, okay, well, what am I actually looking at here? What do I need to compare? And of course here, definitely be logical. Okay, so you want to follow a very good set of logic so it's easy for your reader to understand what you're trying to say. Okay, so mark your points of comparison. And we're talking about, let's say, 6 to 8 points. Okay, this is something you want to practice at home, figuring out how many points you can actually mark, identify, and write about clearly in that 20-minute time limit. Don't mark 10 points if you can only write about 5 in the 20 minutes, because then you're wasting that other 5 or that time to mark the other 5. So careful with that. There is no increase, decrease of all often in these cases, because that's for line graphs, not for pie charts. Okay. So first, mark your points of comparison, 6 to 8 points. First to last, of course. So most important to last. First to last. And in a logical order. Okay, so that's what you're doing for your body. All right, so let's do that with our pie charts here. So here we have our pie charts. We have 1980, 1990. We have 2000, 2010. What is the most logical way to mark our points? So what is the most logical way to mark our points in this case? Should I compare 1980 to 2010? Should I compare 2010 to 1980, 1990? So what should I do? Should I compare trucks to SUVs, cars to trucks, cars to SUVs? So how should I compare this? Should I compare the years? Should I compare the vehicle types, the cars and trucks? What should I do? Okay, so Bayan says, well, maybe the best approach in this case is compare the years. Okay, Naveen says, I think it's more clear if I compare vehicle types. Okay, so she says, well, let's talk about the cars compared to trucks compared to SUVs. Saini says, I think it's better to compare the years. Okay, it's up to you. And when you're practicing at home, different people have different logic, and they can both be okay, or different kinds of logic can be okay. You might want to do vehicles. You might want to do years. Sometimes it's worth trying both and seeing which works better for you. Which one do you feel more confident to write about? I think for this, years make a lot of sense, okay, because it's the popularity of cars sold according to years. So I think years is going to be a little bit easier than vehicle types, but I do think that you could do it by vehicle types as well. So let's mark our points of comparison. My first point is the very dominant sale of cars and very minor sale of trucks in 1990. Okay, or sorry, 1980. Then here in 1990, so this is 1980, this is 1990. Here in 1990, what's kind of my interesting point here? What should I say? What should I mention in 1990? What should be my second point? Wasim, we're doing a task 1, pie charts for IELTS. So what should I compare for 1990? What would be my most clear second point? Shuk Singh says SUVs, but I'd like you to give me a little bit more information next time. Tainder says SUVs. Naveen says, yeah, the sale of SUVs emerged. Absolutely. So we don't have it here, but it emerges here. Okay. Now, always be careful where you invest your time and energy. It's probably not a good idea to say there were no SUVs in 1980 necessarily, because if you say they emerged here, that gives me the same information. Okay, absolutely. So number 2, that's good. So I can talk about the emergence of SUVs. Also, I might talk about, depending on how quick of a writer I am, the increase in the sale of trucks. How much did trucks increase? How much did the sale of trucks increase? Let me enlarge that for you. Okay. So how much did the sale of trucks increase in 1990? Yeah, so Patel says growing trucks, Patel, T-R-U-C-K-S, not N. Yeah, it tripled. Vai says, oh, look at that. There's a tripling there of the trucks, right? So I might even do something like that, a multiplier of 3, okay? Here it's 5%, here it's 15%. Even though it's not a huge slice, it's very significant to say that there's 3 times greater sale of trucks in 1990 than in 1980. It's a triple, threefold, right? So let's continue on. Okay, don't get too lost. So what's happening now in here in 2000? So what's my most significant point in 2000? Okay, so I keep going on here. I keep analyzing. So I go to the next year. And the next year, what's happening? What's my most notable piece of data in that year there? In 2000, what's happening? What should I mark? So Aditya says the sale of SUVs have clearly increased, and now they are more than trucks. So yeah, so we definitely mark that as our point number 4, and they're greater than trucks, right? So greater than. Just a second, I'll get you guys back on camera here. I saw it kind of click off there, no worries. Just give me one moment. You can think about what else we should be looking at there or how else to interpret that data. Okay, so yep, surpassing trucks. How much does it increase? Anybody notice how much SUVs increased from this year here? So look at SUVs here, it's 6%. And 10 years later, so a decade later, in 2000, you have 30%. It's a multiplication factor of 5. So it's 5 times greater than a decade before. Okay, that's a huge difference. Tinder, just saying 24% increase is not as interesting as saying it's a 5-fold increase. Okay, so 5 times or 5-fold increase 10 years later. Absolutely. Okay, by this point, we might want to mention that this great increase in the sale of cars and in the sale of trucks, which is kind of the same, has really taken a bite from the sale of cars. Okay, so trucks and SUVs, their increased sales have taken mostly a bite from the sale of cars, which by 2000 are at 54% of the market. So again, depending on how fast of a writer you are, you might include this for your point number 5. Might. If you're not too fast, then don't worry about that. It's more of a detail, okay? All right, so 2010, what's going on there? So in 2010, what should I mention? So if I'm talking about 2010 compared to 2000, what should I mention? What is my most interesting piece of information there? How can I talk about that? Ah, Jeffrey, clever, clever. Yeah, I wouldn't, yeah, that was the trick question. So Aditya, I see you're saying cars picking up the market again. Vahit Tutya says there's not really significant changes 10 years later compared to 10 years prior. Yeah, that's more important. So be careful. Don't get lost in details. So here we have a 4% change. Here we have a 2% change. Here we have a 2% change. That's not a big change. 2% is very, very small, okay? In science, for a lot of data, 5% change is minimum to call it significant. In a 10-year period, that's very, very tiny little change. You'd have to be careful. Don't say something like cars are beginning to increase again. It's a little bit awkward to assume that from a 4% change. So the most notable difference here, number 6, is sales are similar. Okay, so remember, in these charts and graphs, you're not just contrasting, so you're not just stating the differences, but you're stating the similarities as well, okay? So here, sales appear to be equal. Okay, so we have our points of comparison. Now, what we need to do is simply put this together. So do that with me now. I'll check your sentences. I'm going to go step by step, somewhat slowly, and then try to write with your own words. I'll leave these up here so you can kind of remember these. Here, let me make sure you don't get confused. I'll just mark the ones that are for later. Okay, so those are for later. It's point 1, 2, and 3 for 1999 and 1980, and then it's points 4, 5, and 6 for 2000, 2010. Okay, so our point number 1 is clearly this huge market for cars in 1980. Okay, so let's talk about that first. Now, here we go. So our analyses, and each one of these points deserves at least one sentence. Okay, sometimes you can join them in complex or compound sentences, but they generally deserve one sentence. So in 1980, the massive slice indicating car sales shows the clear demand for this product at 95%. Okay. The remaining, you could, if you want, say the remaining 5% is the purchase of trucks. Okay, that's it. So 1980, that's my point number 1. In 1980, the massive slice indicating car sales, and it is a massive slice, it's almost the entire pie, shows the clear demand for this product at 95%. And then if you want, and you're quick, you can say the remaining 5% is the purchase of trucks. Okay, so Awal Hidayah says, in 1980, the car sales had the largest proportion of the U.S. market. Awal, you can even say something like in 1980, cars had nearly the entire U.S. market for vehicle sales. You could say it like that as well, okay? Aditya Carr says, in 1980, the car sales were very dominant in the market, making up almost the entire pie or entire market, something like that, sure. Minhaj Patel says, in 1980, sales of cars were the most popular, not famous, in 1980 with 95%. Don't repeat 1980, okay? Chunk is okay, Simran. You could say chunk, okay? That's all right. Okay, so let's go to the second point. Now, the second one here, notice that we have a couple of interesting facts. One is the tripling of the sales of trucks and the appearance of SUVs. So write a sentence for that while I do the same, okay? Jubilant James for the first sentence says, by looking at into the 1980s pie chart, the huge piece depicts the highest demand for car sales. That's good, okay? That works as well, Jubilant James. So a lot of ways to write this as long as you're getting the right idea. Okay, 10 years later, SUVs emerge on the market, making up a small portion of vehicles sold. In addition, the popularity of trucks triples when compared to 1980. Okay, so here I'm adding that point number 3. In addition, let me bring that down a bit there so you can see it. Okay, so 10 years later, SUVs emerge on the market. You could say a decade later. Decade is 10 years. SUVs emerge on the market, making up a small portion of vehicles sold. In addition, the popularity of trucks triples when compared to 1980. Let's see how you worded your sentences for those 2 points. Okay. So Naveen Kumar says, a decade later, SUVs start gaining popularity. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to say it. Start gaining, I don't know if I'd say popularity, Naveen, because 6% is, it's a little bit tricky. But you're on the right path. You're not going to lose marks for that. You are on the right path. Jubilant James says, after a decade, the sales of SUVs emerges. Right. Or emerged, sure. Jubilant James, there you could use past or present tense because it depends whether you're referring to the data or you're referring to the actual sales of cars, and either one would work, past or present tense. Just a little FYI. Awal says there's an emerging of SUVs 10 years later. Furthermore, trucks sales increased 3 times that of 1980. Couple of corrections there, Awal. Pay attention to how I read that. If you missed it, you can look at this video again an hour later. Just indicate the time, which is at 38 minutes right now. Vegan Jeffrey says, sales of SUVs first appear in 1990 with 6% of the market. Meanwhile, trucks had much higher sales, 3 times that of 1980. Okay, you need a reference point there, Jeffrey, to finish that sentence clearly, okay? All right, but some good points there. So we've marked points 2 and 3 now. Okay, so we've got 2 and 3. We've got that threefold. We've got point number 1. So I'm going to erase that because it's clear for us now. Okay, and we can focus on those last few points, 4, 5, and 6. Doing good, ladies and gentlemen, doing good. So this is how it works, okay? This is what you want to do. All right. Now, of course, when you practice this at home, you can do it very fast. So you definitely have enough time in 20 minutes when you train your eyes to pick out these main points. So now we go on to the year 2000. Okay? So we go on to the year 2000, and we talk about this point here, which we marked, number 4, the five-fold increase of SUVs and the basically loss of car sales due to the increased popularity in the sales of SUVs and trucks. So that's what we need to write about now. So try that, okay? Try that, girls and guys. Try to write point number 4, point number 5 for the year 2000. I'm going to do the same, and then we'll compare, okay? We'll see who's doing what. All right. So here, SUVs gaining that additional 24% of the market. Notably, after another decade, the popularity of SUVs is quite evident. Okay? Making up 1/3 of the vehicle market. They sold fivefold that of 1990. Okay, that's quite a complex sentence. I realize that, but again, I'm just pushing you to learn that higher level English. So leading an expression here, notably, it gives coherence. It's helping me connect. It's emphasizing this very interesting fact. Notably, after another decade, the popularity of SUVs is quite evident, comma, defining that popularity, making up 1/3 of the vehicle market. They sold fivefold that of 1990. Okay. All right. By this year, okay, 1/3 and fivefold are joined into one word with that hyphen because it's 1/3, right? And fivefold is a 5-time multiplier. Let's see what you're writing there before I go to that next sentence. So Awal says SUVs sales rose 5 times higher after another decade. Awal, again, careful. That's a little bit more like a line graph than a pie chart. Okay. Ben Abdallah Salma says a decade later, the SUV wins popularity, making it fivefold more purchased than 1990. I did a couple corrections there. Make sure to pay attention to that. Okay. Naveen says, by the year 2000, SUVs sold 5 times greater than a decade prior, while cars managed to hold at 54% of the market share. Naveen, very nice. You don't need a period or a comma after prior because your dependent clause follows your independent clause, okay? Jubilant James says, looking more deeply into the pie charts, the year 2000 marked a 5-fold increase in the sales of SUVs as compared to the previous decade. Couple of grammar corrections there, Jubilant James, pay attention to that, but otherwise a very nice sentence, okay? Jeffrey says, customers' preference for SUVs were larger compared to a decade ago, pushing the sale of this vehicle type to 30%. Good, Jeffrey. Very nice. Another different approach to express that same idea. Very clever. Let's take one more. Nelva says there was a dramatic decline in car sales to 54%, while the SUVs were outracing trucks in 1990. Yet, Nelva, you mentioned that they were more than trucks, but again, careful. You're kind of writing like a line graph. Decline, decrease, increase is more appropriate for line graphs than for pie charts. So be careful with that, okay? Yeah, so if we want to get really tricky, we could say this, and I'm going to use your reminder here, Nalva, that they outperformed and their sales outperforms trucks by almost double, right? If we want to be very clever with this, then we can actually state that the sales of SUVs in 2000 were pretty close to double that of trucks, because trucks were 16%. By this time, or at this time, by this time is more line graphs, at this time, the popularity of trucks and cars, of trucks and SUVs had reduced car sales to nearly half the American vehicle market. Okay, so again, if you're writing fast and if you have time for that point number 5, remember what I said, only write point number 5 here if you have been writing for, let's say, 10, 12 minutes and you're like, hey, this is easy peasy, cakewalk, I can do this no problem, I'm going to throw in and talk about point 5 as well. Point 6 is not so in depth anyway. So in that case, write about 0.5. If you've been writing for, let's say, 17, 18 minutes, definitely don't include 0.5. Just go to point number 6, finish task 1, and then go to task 2. Okay? So now let's finish the analysis and write about this point number 6. This should be fairly straightforward as long as you've realized that the market in 2010 is pretty similar to 2000, okay? So it's quite close to 2000. So that's what we need to mention. I'm going to write this sentence for point number 6. Please do the same, okay? Let's see if we agree with the way that we should express this piece of information or this data from the pie charts, all right? So let's do that now. So again, 10 years later, it is clear that not much has changed in the vehicle preference of the U.S. public. The proportion of trucks, SUVs, and cars sold are relatively the same as in 2000. Okay, so that would be one way to do that. Okay, so again, 10 years later, it is clear that not much has changed in the vehicle preference of the U.S. public. The proportion of trucks, SUVs, and cars sold are relatively the same. Now, if you know your grammar rules, you could just join it with a comma as well to make it an even nicer sentence. Why? Because this is a definition of this part here. Okay? Juan Pablo says, 1 decade later, it is clearly evident that the sales have kept almost the same proportionally for these 3 types of vehicles. A little bit more there, Juan, but you're on the right track, okay? Good question. Can we use 10 years past? No, after the passage of 10 years, you could say that. So passage is the right word form, not past, okay? The passage of 10 years is okay. Pachu, you don't need to do 8 to 12 points. That's going to be way too much and way too long. I bet you were already about 200, 210 words, so you don't need to do that, okay? Jeffrey says in 2010, the car market trend in the U.S. stayed pretty much the same as 2000, despite some minor differences in the proportions. Yeah, and Jeffrey, you might not even say despite some minor differences, because they're so minor, it's basically irrelevant to mention. Okay, it's unnecessary. Ahmed Mohammed Hussein Rabi says, similarly in 2010, the proportion of the three vehicles are about the same as a decade prior. Okay, you do need to make that reference, Ahmed, to 2000. All right? Okay, good. Now, are we done? Yeah, you could finish here if you want to, but I do suggest, students, that if you have a couple of minutes, so here if you have 2-3 minutes, you can make a choice, okay? Your choice number one is to look at your essay and review it to make sure your grammar and your words are clear and you're not making any big mistakes. If you're not confident in your writing accuracy for grammar, spelling, then I suggest using 2-3 minutes time to review your work. So if you've been writing for, let's say, 16-17 minutes, then use the 3-4 minutes, review for mistakes, make corrections. If you're very good and you have some solid skills in English writing, and you're like, hey, I know I probably didn't make any big mistakes in my essay here, then what you can do here is you can include a summary. Okay? A summary is a clear observation that we can draw or that we can see in the charts. Like, for example, a trend. Okay? So, and it's just one sentence. All right, so again, if you're not confident in the accuracy of your grammar and your writing, use this time to review your overview and your analysis, make some corrections where needed. If you are confident in your writing and you know you can do that quickly anyway, then write a little summary. So can we see a trend here? Can we see something that's clearly observable that we haven't included in our overview? So is there something we can say that in our summary, in one sentence here, that gives more value to the reader that can clearly be observed here? Okay, tell me that. Can I see something in these 4 pie charts, in these 4 years, about the American vehicle market where we can say to a reader, well, in summary, this, this, and this, and then the reader says, oh, aha, okay, thanks for giving me that observation. Okay? Yes, it is an observation, absolutely. So can we observe something in these 4 charts? Simran says car sales decrease or go down decade after decade. Yes, I think you could say that a little bit more cleverly. Okay, here, look at if I draw a line. This might help you. Okay, so that might help you make an interesting comparison. So Jubilant James says, for the 4 given years, the 4 pie charts show that the U.S. citizens' preference for automobiles has remained dominant for cars. Yes, but I think, James, that's a little bit misleading. I think we could say something a little bit more clever. And this is definitely for those students who are pushing for those band 8 or 9. Some of you, maybe you need to study medicine or law at the master's or PhD level, and your schools are looking for 7.5, 8, or 8.5 in your IELTS exam, then you need this. Otherwise, you don't need to worry about it too much. What we can see here is that before the new millennium, there is a shift in the market preference of vehicle types. After the new millennium, the preference of vehicle types stabilizes in the market. Okay, so that would be your very in-depth comparison there. So let me write that up for you, just to show you an example. Okay, and again, this is looking for those really high marks where you're saying, hey, look, I'm not just a native speaker of English, or I'm not just an international speaker of English, but I'm an expert user of English and communication, and I can give you a summary like this. And here all you need to do is something simple, like in summary, at a closer look, one may observe that in the decades prior to the new millennium, there was a shift in vehicle preferences in the US. However, after the turn of the century, this seems to have stabilized. Okay, so something like that, all right? Okay, so there you have it. That's the full essay, okay? So we have a nice overview. We have a nice analysis, body paragraph, well-structured, well-connected, and then pushing for those band 8, 9s to become an English teacher or to do your doctorate degree. You give a nice summary like this, and bada bing, bada bang. You've done a great job. You're confident. You're ready to go to task 2. Okay? You can read that essay on our channel. This video will be up live in about an hour. Hats off to a lot of you who have been very actively commenting in the chat stream. Sorry if I missed some of your comments or some of your sentences. I do try to catch as many as I can within the structure of the class and the time of the class. So don't be shy. Always put your best foot forward and give your sentences. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. Tomorrow's class, same time, Central European time. I saw a couple of you ask from 15 to 16 o'clock, okay? Most of our classes are 15 to 16 o'clock. Tomorrow we're looking at reading strategy. Again, if you have questions about our products or our courses or IELTS, don't be shy. Send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. I'm here to help. Remember, these materials are coming from our websites, aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gltshelp.com for general IELTS. You can download our app from your Google Play or iTunes store. Look for Academic IELTS Help, okay? Have a wonderful rest of your day. Make sure to practice at home. Practice does make perfect. If it's late in your country, then sweet dreams to those of you getting ready for bed. Bye for now, everyone. Keep up the good work.